Hello, and welcome to another live stream, this time on a Wednesday. We're trying to confuse you this week by changing
We are.
days. But we are here. We hope you'll be able to join us. And if this is your first time watching, my name's Craig from the website mansioningles.com. You can see it at the bottom there, scrolling, moving across the screen. And it's a website that has free content for Spanish learners of English. And we have a podcast. The name is also hopefully going across the screen at inglespodcast.com. And that's a weekly podcast for learners of any language or learning English, but with any native language. So you're welcome to listen to that for free. And if you are interested in practicing your speaking, I do have courses, conversation courses that will help you do that. If you would like information and if you would like to contact me, go to englishcraig.com and you can see that this confuses me, Lynn. Just there.
It's going that way.
It's opposite, yeah, just
that
there.
way.
Englishcraig.com is the website for
there you are.
my conversation courses. And joining me today is Lynn from putitlikethis.com. Hi, Lynn.
Yeah, you'll be happy. I only have one website. It comes after all of Craig's websites. And mine is called putitlikethis.com. Hello, everybody. If you haven't joined us before, my name is Lynn, and I'm an online English teacher, but I specialize in creating tailor-made courses for people who want to achieve specific objectives in English. So depending on the objective that you have, it could be an exam, it could be a business presentation, it could be writing in English, could be just holiday English. I create courses to specifically get you to those objectives. So if you're interested, you can contact me at putitlikethis.com.
Okay. And we have what will hopefully be an interesting topic for you today, the topic of modern education. Is it fit for purpose? If you are joining us live on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn, please say hi. Tell us where you're from. Don't forget to say hello, because it gets a bit lonely here if we don't know that anybody's watching. So please let us know. If you're watching, and if you have any questions while we're speaking, then join the discussion, put your comments in the chat, and we will answer them for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, modern education. I mean, I had to smile when you said, I hope everybody's interested in this, because I think this topic, it can be interesting for lots of people, but it's especially interesting for teachers, isn't it, Craig? So we really like to talk about education. Maybe.
Although you say that, Lynn, I mean, I am interested in education in general because I'm an educator, but I don't have kids, and you have 3. So you're in a much better position to speak about the state school system in the country where you're living, which is Spain, than I am, because I really don't know much about what goes on in the state schools over here. So it'd be interesting to hear your point of view.
But I also think it is, I mean, I have to give a little caveat before we start. We are not experts on this topic. And I mean, even though I have had children going through, I think most people feel they can talk about education, and they talk always about their own experience that they had, because that's what you know. And it's very difficult to actually really know the experience or alternative experiences unless you are a professional in research about educational systems. So, I mean, again, I can tell you the experience I know from my daughters, their educational experience in Spain at the moment. But of course, their educational experience is one experience of many different types that you can also have. So I think I want to mention that right at the beginning, because whatever we say, of course, is not an expert opinion. They're just opinions. And I think today we're going to just, I mean, that's the whole idea of it. I think the more we talk about it, the more we think about new aspects of the topic, and hopefully it will help us like clarify our ideas a little bit more.
Exactly.
I don't think we talk about it enough, really. You see it on the news a lot about education, but it's always like the experts have decided and it's this. but you don't actually get a lot of normal people discussing it. So that's why I wanted to discuss it with you today.
And
On
what is
this.
interesting is we get a variety of people watching, so it'd be interesting to know your views on the education system where you live. So if
Yes.
you are watching, let us know where you are in the world, because we'll be asking you a bit later what the education system is like in your country, in your city, and then we can compare it and talk about the good things and the bad things connected to education. But shall we look at some vocabulary first?
Okay, well, we can while people are joining.
While people are joining. So we've got a university degree and we've got career, which if you are a Spanish speaker, those two expressions or words get confused quite often. So the career is your working life after you leave university, and the
Or
degree
school, or school.
or school if you
It
don't
doesn't
go
have
to
to be
university.
university.
Yeah,
But your career is your working life.
yeah. And the degree is the qualification you get, or don't get if you're like me, if you or don't get when you go to university. So you study for a degree. That's why you go to university, and your degree hopefully will help you find a job.
And then, of course, we have the words employment and unemployment. That's not really directly to do with education, but as we'll probably talk about later today, a lot of education is directed at trying to get people jobs, ultimately. So usually what people do after education is they go into employment, holding a job. If you are if you want a job and you can't find one, then you will be unemployed, which means you'll be going into unemployment, and that can be quite distressing, of course, because you don't have any income, and unemployment is often related to education. Sometimes when people are unemployed, they have to go and educate themselves again, or they have to re-educate themselves in specific fields in order to try to improve their employment chances.
Hi, Priscilla. Good to see you here. Priscilla's watching from Malaga.
Hi,
So
Priscilla. That's nice
hello
to meet
to
you.
you. Remember, if you are
Hello.
watching, say hello. Tell us where you're watching from and what country you're in, so that we can have an idea of your educational system. The curriculum is, I always get confused. Curriculum is singular, curricula is plural, isn't it? So the curriculum is basically what is fixed study for a particular year in a particular place. So I don't think that's a very good description, but how would you
Well,
describe curriculum?
I think a curriculum is a document essentially that outlines what the objectives are, what the minimum objectives are of the education. So it outlines, and when you said per year, often there is a curriculum per year of education. If we talk about Spain, the curriculum is set by the government. I think by the regional governments in Spain, but there is a national government law too, and it specifies that certain things must be taught. So the teachers don't have the freedom to teach what they want or what they feel like, but they have to always refer to the curriculum, and that determines the content of the education, really. The
And you often
curriculum, if you
hear
like, is the content.
the expression national curriculum, which means that
Yeah.
all of the schools in the country are following the same document, as Lynn said, the same set of topics
Minimum content, really.
to be taught, and they'll follow it nationally. The whole country will be following the same national curriculum. Skills.
And then skills. Really, unlike subjects, we haven't put the word subjects here, but what you learn in school is a subject, like maths, French, English. That would be a subject. And skills are the abilities that you have, which you also have to learn. So, for example, you might have writing skills or reading skills, or what other kind of skills could you have? IT skills, computer skills. This is your ability or your proficiency in doing certain types of activity, rather than just a set of content, which is on the curriculum. So often in schools, they are teaching subjects, but they're also teaching skills. So maybe it's important that you learn to read by a certain age or things like that.
And
Okay.
state and public school, it's a bit confusing. Let's look at them in general first, and then we'll look at the UK. State schools are, well, actually,
Well,
I
this
thought
is
that was
particularly in
private
the
school.
UK. This is
Okay,
particularly in the UK, I
you
think.
confused me there a little. I thought I was going to compare state and private schools, but state and public schools, they're the same, aren't they?
Yeah, they are, except in the UK.
Except in the UK.
Okay, Craig's just got confused here, but normally a school that is run by the government, which is financed by the government, sometimes in most countries those are called state schools because they belong to the state. And in many countries, they are called public schools because they belong to the general public. And then in countries like in Spain, state and public school is essentially the same thing. And then the counterpart to it could be a private school, which is privately run. So they don't receive finance from the government. However, the word public school in the UK is a big problem because public school in the UK means private school. So a state school in the UK is financed by the government, and a public school is financed privately. And there are a few public schools in Britain that are really, really famous, like Eton and St Gordon's. And if somebody says to you in England, and they're from England, and they say, I went to public school, then what they mean is they went to one of these private schools. Okay.
Exactly. That was
So
very
that's a bit of a
very well
problem.
explained. Yeah, and it's confusing as
It's
well.
very confusing.
So if you are watching, what's the education like where you live? Are you happy with it? What are the things you would like to change, maybe like to fix about it? What are the good things and what are the bad things?
Yeah, tell us.
Tell us, write in the chat and tell us obviously where you are so that we can have an idea of what country you're from. And another question here, which I think you wrote, Lynn, but I'm not sure what you mean by this, if education being political. Do you mean if
Political.
depending on the political party that's running the government, then the curriculum changes?
Yes.
I
And
thought
that's what I meant by that, because I mean, education is something that is let's say there is an education ministry in every government. I think in every democratic government there is a minister for education. So there is a ministry for education in the political organization of a country, and they are responsible for creating the national curriculum, for example, and deciding what should be taught. And I asked this question, is education in your country very political? Because I was quite surprised when I came to Spain that they have an educational law which determines the curriculum. But it's very common in Spain that every time that the government changes, and traditionally it goes, sometimes it's the right, sometimes it's the left. And every time the government changes in Spain, they bring out a new educational law. And that for me was very surprising when I came to Spain, because I thought, what has politics got to do with education originally? I mean, I think now I know more, but but it was like, it seems nonsense to me, because it seems that if when you agree about what is necessary to teach children, and I'm thinking of the basic things like reading, writing, sport, I'm thinking, what is political about that? Yeah. So why do they keep changing the laws? Of
Do you
course,
know?
there are
Do you know
other
if they change
aspects.
funding as well? Do they change the funding depending
I
on who's
don't
in
know.
power?
Well, I suppose so, because I mean, every time a new government comes, they decide in the budget, don't they, how much money they're going to put into education or not. So I suppose there is an element of that. But I was surprised at the involvement of the politicians in the curriculum. I can understand the involvement of the
In the budget.
politicians in the budget, but the involvement of politicians in what should be taught, I found quite surprising.
Yeah, that
Although,
is.
of course, in Spain, there are many political questions, especially because in Spain they have many regions, autonomous regions. They have multiple languages. They have multiple views of their history, their local history, their regional history, and they have a national history. And for example, they get involved quite heavily in modifying. For example, if you live in Valencia, you have different things in the curriculum than if you live in Extremadura.
Well, that kind of makes sense with some subjects, obviously not with basic subjects like maths and chemistry and science. But if you think about local national identity and language in Spain, it can be quite divisive. So it makes sense that each area of Spain would have a slightly different curriculum depending on the weight or the emphasis that region has on local language and culture. So I can see that changing and being politicized. Yeah.
No, and I think
But
it is. It also has an influence, for example, on history
yeah.
and geography and other, and literature. Yeah, because there's more focus on the regional rather than the national. And also conversely, in the national curriculum, well, there isn't a national curriculum, because each region,
Has its
it doesn't
own
really exist. It has
control.
its own, has its own.
Yeah.
So that in that sense it diversifies, and I don't believe that in Britain it does. In the UK it doesn't do that. If I speak for England, there is a difference between English education, Welsh education, and Scottish education,
Yeah.
because they are separate governments. Just like in Spain there are autonomous governments, well, in the UK there is Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland, of course, as well. And the UK, they have separate governments, and they are responsible for their educational policies too. So it
Yeah.
has been separated. It didn't used to be when I went to school. I don't think it was, but it is now.
Yeah. So, wherever you're watching from, here's a question for you. Do you think there's too much focus on STEM subjects and not enough on the arts? And if you haven't seen that acronym STEM before, it's science, technology, economics, and mathematics. So those
Oh, I
kind
didn't
of
know that.
subjects, STEM subjects, that's one side. And then obviously on the other side, you've got the art topics like literature, music, dance, drama, that kind of thing. So how do you see that split where you are? And maybe then you can tell us from your experience with your daughters, were you happy with the emphasis on both of those areas? Or do you think there should have been more science subjects, more on the arts?
Well, I think my daughter's experience here in Spain was that there was more emphasis on STEM and less on arts, let's say.
And was
But
that okay? Or
my overwhelming impression So the big impression for me was that there was too much in the curriculum. There was too many things in the curriculum. And I think, and that's why I think that maybe the art subjects have been pushed out a little bit, because there just seemed to be too many subjects in the curriculum. They had too, the focus was very diverse. And I suppose maybe that's one of the biggest changes. But I was thinking about this and I'm not really sure, because I was thinking, is it because nowadays the children have more subjects than we did when we went to school? And at first I thought, yeah, it's because they've got more. They have things like computing, for example, now, technology. We didn't have that.
Yeah.
But then on the
Diversity.
other hand, diversity, citizenship, we didn't have that. But then on the other hand, I think back and I think, yeah, but when I went to school, I had cookery, I had needlework, which was how to sew.
I had woodwork and
you had
metalwork.
woodwork and metalwork. I mean, they were when we went to school, they were separated, weren't they? The girls got cookery and needlework, and the boys got metalwork and woodwork.
Not sexist at all.
That was very sexist. I wanted to do woodwork, but of course that's gone now. That's not. I think that the kids do some of it, but I think to myself, well, no, it can't be true, because I did have a lot of subjects too. I had a lot of subjects.
Well, speaking of subjects, we've mentioned some already, but here's a selection of subjects that kids study in school: mathematics, or math without the S if you're speaking American English, language, foreign languages, language meaning your language, so literature and the language of your country or your area, your region, physics, biology, chemistry. Be careful of the pronunciation of that hard K at the beginning of chemistry, and also the F of physics, geography, history, IT, information technology, economics, religion, and sports. Do you think religion should be taught in schools?
I don't know. What do you think?
I think religions should be taught in schools. And I think the kids should be able to have a very broad understanding of all the world religions, so that they can make an educated choice or not. And I think, they should be exposed to everything at school. But not
the interesting
certainly
question.
Not only one. That's quite.
No. But for example, certainly in the UK, and I think increasingly in Spain too, they are saying that the majority of the population in our country, in the UK, is actually they're not religious. I mean, obviously, religions exist in the UK. Yeah, there's Catholicism, there's Judaism, there's Muslims. There's definitely religions exist. But they do say that the majority of people now are increasingly being agnostic, or agnostic means you don't believe in anything. Is that right? Agnostic, you don't believe it? Or have I expressed that?
No,
too?
you're right.
Atheism is you
not believing in God.
Not believing in God. And agnostic is you
not
don't
believing
want to
in anything.
In anything. So increasingly, people are secular, you could say, if you like. And then, it is a relevant question. Is it something to be taught in schools then, or not? I mean, I think religion is important because you have to understand religion to understand history. And religion obviously plays a massive role in politics nowadays, and security of countries, and because there's lots of wars being fought in the name of religion. So I think obviously you have to have some general knowledge about what religious beliefs are, because they do lead beliefs of countries, systems of, they're very important to be able to understand the world, really.
And also, if you think that many religions are basically a code of ethics, then maybe ethics would be a subject to be taught in schools. If you wanted to replace religion with something, then teach ethics as a subject. Hi, Deanna. Deanna, a friend of mine's here. She's in
Hi,
Mexico, and she
Diana.
says public schools follow the government ideology. However, private schools tend to lean to the right and are often Catholic. That's interesting. So
That's
right-leaning
interesting too.
schools
Uh-huh.
with Catholic. So I'm guessing that Catholic is taught not only in the private schools, Deanna, but also in state schools. So Catholic is a religion taught. Are any other religions taught at school in Mexico, or only Catholicism?
Well, maybe in Mexico they don't allow it. I mean, in Spain, although Spain is nominally a Catholic country, they're not allowed to teach Catholicism in a state school.
What did your
In
kids learn? Did your kids learn religion in any form?
Well, my kids they went to a mixed school, so it was a subsidized school. And they did go to a Catholic school, but it was subsidized by the state because traditionally in Spain, the Catholic Church was very heavily involved in education traditionally. I mean, like last century, the majority of education originated through the Catholic Church. They were Catholic, the schools were founded from the Catholic Church. So there were a lot of Catholic churches, but I don't know when it happened. I suppose after the Constitution. Whoever's from Spain here, Priscilla, you might have to keep me right here. At some point, I believe with the Constitution, they said that the state education had to be a-religious. So, for example, they do not teach. If they teach religion, they teach it in the form that you mentioned. They teach religions.
Yeah.
But they don't have in state schools in Spain, they do not allow like Catholic services or celebrations of Catholic festivals. That's not allowed because it has to be inclusive. And it could be like that in Mexico, because I think increasingly many governments, they make the separation between state and church. In France, they do that as well. In Britain, they don't.
I know. I
In Britain,
remember
they don't.
when I was at school, it was strange because I didn't go to a religious school. I went to just an ordinary school, but the religious education that we had to have was a Christian education.
Yeah.
And in the school, there were lots of Hindus, Jewish people, Muslims. It was a complete potpourri, a complete mixture of different religions, but everybody had to learn Christian theology, which was very strange to me.
Yeah.
And we had one assembly where all the kids went together in the morning, and we had to sing hymns and praise the Lord. And I just remember thinking, well, that's strange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when I went, I mean, we were about the same, we're about the same age, so we went at the same time, more or less. And I remember in my school too, the thing was the state schools were all supposedly Christian. So every morning we had an assembly, and it was just like you said, with hymns and prayers and announcements and all of that. It wasn't a church service, but there was a
It was
Christian,
pretty religious.
there was an
There was
element,
a strong
there was a
Christmas
religious
theme.
element there, because there were prayers. And there were definitely there was a lesson. So it wasn't a priest that was giving it. It was a teacher that was giving it, the assembly, that was leading the assembly. But it had a strong Christian element to it. But the people in my classes who were not Christian, who were Muslim or Jewish or Hindu, they were always exempted from going to the assembly. So they were allowed to be out of the assembly for the religious bit.
What did they do during that time?
They used to wait outside, and we used to be jealous because it was like, how can they wait outside and we have to be inside listening to it?
Extra time to do the homework from the day before.
Yeah, and then they were admitted to the end of the assembly when it was all about the school announcements.
Right. Yeah. Well, that made sense.
But they were definitely exempt from being forced. They were not forced to pray or to sing the songs or anything like that.
So very possibly when we went to school, Lynn, very possibly there was an agreement for the national curriculum in the UK to have that Christian, at least Christian assembly, or
Uh-huh.
because if it was the same in the north of England as the
Oh
south,
no,
it must have been
definitely. Uh-huh.
in the
Was Church of
curriculum.
England. Uh-huh. No, because the state is, and as far as I know, I mean, I'm sure that in England the religious element has become less important because, of course, the UK is extremely multicultural now. So it cannot be. I mean, there are schools in some areas that are all Muslim or all Hindu. It depends on where the schools are, in what kind of area you are, and what what kind of British people are living there now, because there's lots of second, third, fourth generations, and they brought their religions and they follow their religions, no problem. So I'm sure that there are schools where that's changed since when we went to school. Mm-hmm.
So let's leave religion for a few minutes. Let's talk about
Mm-hmm.
something different. What subjects are not currently taught in schools that should be, in your opinion? And are
Mm-hmm.
there any subjects that should not be taught?
Mm-hmm.
So both sides of the coin, really.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any subjects that you don't think should be in the curriculum, or anything that's missing from it?
Mm-hmm.
Let us know in the chat if you're watching, and we'll give you our opinion for what it's worth.
What do you think, Craig? Uh-huh.
Ooh, I made a list. Do you want to
Did
hear
you?
it?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yes, go on. Tell me your list.
Top of the list, money management, which I'm terrible at
Mm-hmm.
managing my money. I never learned personal finance, how to budget my
Mm-hmm.
income. And I think that's terribly important, especially when you
Mm-hmm.
start working. You need to
Mm-hmm.
know how much money is coming in, how much money you have to spend on bills, how to manage your money, and maybe have some left over that you can invest.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of information will be very, very useful. Personal skills, especially communication,
Mm-hmm.
how to speak in front of people, how to communicate effectively. First aid, I think, should be taught. Basic first
Ah,
aid.
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Drama
Mm-hmm.
and improvisation, because very often you're in situations where you have to think on your feet and negotiate and speak effectively. And I think improv, I don't know if you've ever done any improvisation,
Mm-hmm.
and drama is very useful for that. It makes you a quick thinker and not be caught out in certain situations. And as
Mm-hmm.
we mentioned before, ethics, we spoke about religion.
Mm-hmm.
Ethics, I think, should be taught. Cooking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a great fan of all of that. I would replace the religion subject, I think, and I would make it more part of history, I think. You know?
But wouldn't the history be biased depending on, like you said at the beginning, which political party is in control? Or I think history is always kind of, and that's another problem I've got with views of history. I don't think history is taught the same in Japan as it is in the UK or in America, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I think the view of history is always seen through the eyes of the country that experienced it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. That's true. What I meant with religion being part of history, yeah, I mean, I suppose they have to try to teach history as objectively as they can, but you are right, history is a very subjective subject. But I think like maybe comparative religion, you know, I don't think it's necessary for the kids to learn religion in order to believe, you know. I think it's enough that children learn about the basic principles of the different religions.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think that I think religion is a personal choice, you know, and I don't
Yes.
think that in school they should dedicate a lot of time to making people religious.
No, leave that to the families. The families
I
do
would
a good
leave that
enough
to the
job
family,
on
or
their own.
yeah, to leave that to the family, or what you do outside of school. If you want to practice a religion, you obviously have religious ceremonies that you practice. You go to church, you go to the synagogue, you go to the mosque. And I think that that is enough. And maybe in school, just give the basic principles of the other religions in order to try to teach tolerance, I think.
Yeah, good
Yeah,
point.
but not in order to try to convince the children one way or the other, you know?
But then, let's say, for example, there is a religious family bringing up children, and children go to
Mm-hmm.
school. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's really important that they learn about all of the religions, not only the
Mm-hmm.
one that they're, and indoctrination is a very strong word, not only the one they're
Mm-hmm.
being exposed to
Mm-hmm.
through their family, so that
Mm-hmm.
at least they can
Mm-hmm.
have an educated choice when they want to
Yeah.
choose or not choose a religion.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think the parents should have any say in that. I think that should
Uh-huh.
be, because
Well, I think
obviously,
you'll find on the state curriculum that's in Spain, that has to happen like that. That, for example, even the school my girls went to, although it was a Catholic school, in religion they had to learn about other religions because that was part of the national curriculum, and they don't get money from the government unless they follow the national curriculum. Hmm. And the
Priscilla's
Catholic part was extra, if you like.
Priscilla's in Costa Rica, and
Mm.
well, she's from Costa Rica. Sorry, Priscilla.
Ah, okay.
And children who practice different religions other than Catholicism could be exempt to have the religion class if parents ask for permission. Yeah, I mean that
Yeah.
sounds fair to me. That
Yeah,
sounds
of
very
course.
fair.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a very personal belief, and I think it's tricky there. But we were talking about what any subjects that should not be taught, or what subjects are not taught. I can think of
I've got
lots of
one
subjects as
before we go
well.
to you. Can I add one
Uh-huh.
more to my
Yeah, of
list?
course.
Home improvement skills, basic plumbing, basic electricity, how to change a plug,
Hmm.
things
How
like
to change a light bulb.
how to change a light bulb. Yeah, how many teachers does it
Uh-huh.
need to change a light bulb? Anyway, so
Yeah.
yeah, I think basic home improvement
Uh-huh.
DIY skills
Uh-huh.
should be taught. Okay, what have I missed? What have I left any out there?
No, I don't think you have, Craig. And I was because when I thought about that question, I thought, yeah, okay, you need to know all these things like science, like biology and physics and all of this. And it's kind of important because I suppose it we want children to try to develop an interest in one of the areas, and that obviously eventually, hopefully, will determine which direction they go in. Like some people like biology, they'll go into medicine. Some people like engineering, so they like physics, so they go into engineering. Some people like languages like we do, and we go into the kind of professions that we've gone into. So I understand why all of those need to be sampled. But if I think back to my education and the things that I can remember that were really useful from my schooling, I asked myself that. And I thought the things that I have used repeatedly in my life that I've never forgotten have been my cookery classes,
Hmm.
my sewing classes. Yeah. Because in sewing, you have to do a lot of maths as well, no? To calculate things, to calculate the way you take things up. And so I remember my cookery classes, my maths, my sewing classes. And the other thing that I remember very vividly was human biology, because they are things that I still use today, like you had like knowledge about hygiene because of biology, because viruses come, what you have to do if you have an infection or a cut, because bacteria come and you can get infected. A very general knowledge of your human body so that you can diagnose yourself a little bit. Yeah, that if you have a pain here, it's your heart, sort of thing. And I think the fact that I can remember all of those things, for me, already shows me what was important.
Yeah.
And there's so many things that I've forgotten that were not important. And I think what you said before about how to change, the point is, what you need to learn is skills. And you need maths and you need literacy in order to do those skills. But I would like to see a future education system that in school, when you're a young person growing up, that it focuses more on skills with the basic things that you need for those skills. And then to allow you space when you're older to go into theory, because theory of things that you like or that you have a natural curiosity for. Because I think when I was 9 or 12, I didn't have a natural curiosity for the theory of physics, but I did
Yeah.
have a natural curiosity for things like, I don't know, recognizing the stars or being able to name the stars or being able to orient myself on a walk because you can see the pole star, for example, you
Well, that's
know?
interesting because I know in the Scandinavian education system, there is some leeway or there's the possibility for the students in some cases to choose the subjects they want to study at a very early age. So if you had that innate curiosity for astronomy, then that's the subject you chose to study. So it was very flexible, particularly in Finland and Norway. The subjects you can choose at a very early age, which might be a good idea because I agree with you. I was never particularly interested in physics, chemistry, mathematics, and I don't think I've ever used anything I've learned in those science subjects. So it would have been nice to be able to go more to the arts and to languages that would have helped me in my career. On the other hand, a friend of mine in the chat there, Lumir, who lives in the Czech Republic, he probably was very pleased he studied physics because that's physics was what he actually built his career around. And he says the Czech education system focuses early on preparation for a specific job. Why is it supposed to be why is that a disadvantage? Maybe because it prevents students studying other subjects and maybe
And it prevents them
opening their
learning,
choices.
maybe widening their experience of the
Horizons.
world
Yeah.
or widening their horizons. Yeah.
And he continues, Lumia says, I think that preparing for a specific field or specific area is better than graduating from university and then starting a career as a waiter in a local restaurant because you don't know what you can actually do. Yeah.
But that's something that maybe we are going to come on to. And it's about the point of education, because I think there's many people in Spain, for example, now, and in the UK too. There are more and more people going on to university than ever before.
Hmm.
A lot of them, when they finish university, can't find work, and there's this dilemma about, is it a good idea to continue in university and to specify yourself in a field or to direct yourself in a field if there are no employment opportunities later? Is the purpose of education to create a workforce? What is the purpose of education? I think we had that
Should we go? Should we go
topic.
to before we go to that though, Lynn? Let's just finish with a comment here about on
Oh,
the topic
sorry.
of religion. That Lumia said that religion in Czech Republic is only optional, and there's not much interest in it in the most. I would say atheist. That's the adjective. So atheist
Atheist.
country in Europe. So yeah, good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Why bother?
That it's optional. And I like the idea of the optional, because I don't know, did you have many optional subjects when you were at school? I don't think there were that many.
Home economics I chose, which was cooking, and I was
Uh-huh.
one of the most popular boys in the school because I always had cakes and scones and pastries that I'd baked in the
Uh-huh.
morning, and I was very popular. I always got picked for the school football team because I had cakes with me.
But you were allowed to choose home economics. You
We
see,
could choose
I
something. We also
I
could
couldn't
choose
choose
between
things.
French and German,
Yeah, I remember
and
I
I
could
chose
too.
French, so we had the choice of languages. But there were subjects that we couldn't choose, that we had to study, like physics, chemistry, English, etc., art. Yeah. So, what is the point of education? That's a very good question. If you're watching, what do you think? Write in the chat what you think the purpose of education is. Is it to create a workforce, as Lynn said? Is it to prepare
Well,
us
that's
for
only
life
one.
in
I think there's
general?
many points of education. I don't believe for a minute that it's only to create a workforce,
Okay.
just to be clear.
Okay.
But it is one of the big drivers of education, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
that's why parents pay a lot of money for education. I'm a parent, and I wanted my children to have a good education so that they could secure a job which can secure their existence in the future. And I
Brilliant.
think, I mean, I don't think I'm rare in that. I think the majority of parents have that objective. If you're trying to make your children independent, then you want to make sure that they can support themselves and have a life to some degree, with some degree of security. And I mean, parents spend a lot of money on education in one way or another. I mean, so if you're very rich, you might pay for a private education if you think it's better. But even people who are not very rich, they often pay for extra classes if they think their children are having difficulty.
And the perfect example of that is here in Spain, where if you want your children to speak English well, you probably have to pay for extra tuition, because the children aren't going to come out of school in many parts of Spain speaking and having a good command of English, even
Yeah.
though they've been taught it for 5 or 6 years.
And if you think about our students, Craig, I mean, I'm sure it's the same for you as for me. The majority, not all, but the majority of my students are learning English because of their professional needs, because they think it will either get them a better job in the future, or they need it on their curriculum, or they are working already and they need English for their job. So it's usually either with the potential of better opportunities or because of their current situation. It's not all of the students. There are still students who do it because they really enjoy English, and they enjoy the language, and they're naturally curious, and they just really enjoy learning a foreign language and want to perfect it. But they are in the minority of my students now. I don't know about you. Is that true for
Yeah,
you
no,
too?
I think that's true. Yeah, I'd agree with that for sure. Um, yeah, absolutely. But
So,
I was just thinking as you were talking about the point of education in wasn't education originally from the Industrial Revolution, the way the way it developed from people working in factories. Um, if you think of the way in many schools the teachers just talking to the students in everything's controlled by the bell, for example, and it seems to be very regimented and not very flexible. There isn't much room in education these days, from what I can see, for creativity, for diversity. It just seems very rigid, and yeah, I think it needs to be reformed. I think it needs to be changed. Sorry, I was thinking about that off at a tangent as you were talking.
no, you were. I mean, it's. I think originally people do say in the West, in the UK and Spain, and that education did come. Well, certainly mass education. Mass education came because they wanted to have a workforce. And if the workforce in the Industrial Revolution was going to be efficient, then people needed to be able to read, they needed to be able to write, they needed certain skills so that they could work in the factories.
Yeah,
So I think that has been a driver of education over the years, is to create a workforce that is that can move the country forward. I think that's still the point of modern governments, because there's a lot of emphasis. If they want a high performing economy, they want to attract high performance industries. And in order to do that, they need a highly qualified workforce. So I think that's also behind the money that's gone into pushing more and more people into universities, because they want a higher skilled workforce.
But aren't the universities, especially in the UK, hasn't that become more of a business these days rather than a way to create that highly educated workforce? It seems to me that they're just trying to make money. When we were younger, it didn't cost any money to go to university,
No,
and
that's true.
now it's following the US model. And in the US, you end up signing away the first 20, 25 years of your working life, paying off your school fees because it cost you so much money to get a degree. It's become a business, and I think the
Yeah.
UK is going the same way.
And I know that my husband, and he works in business, and he knows other people too. And you've been hearing this in the press too. Increasingly, employers are saying that they're having a lot of difficulty filling jobs at all levels. So not only highly skilled jobs, because in the tech industry, they often in the IT industry, especially, they say the university degrees are old fashioned. The technology is moving at such a pace that it's worthless what the students are learning in university. And I know this from some friends of my daughter, that some people actually have chosen to leave university because they've been teaching themselves with the internet how to program, and they are already working at a higher level than the kind of knowledge they can get in university in technology. So there's many people in highly skilled jobs that are not using university anymore in order to get the skills they need to be able to do the job. And my husband often has the other side of the coin, the reverse, when he's trying to fill jobs that are not highly skilled, but they are jobs. They are employed, like, for example, working in the warehouse, preparing orders, deliveries, those kind of jobs. He's having real problems filling that because a lot of the people come, and he says they haven't got basic maths, they haven't got basic reading and writing skills. And it causes, so they're not even qualified for what would be considered a lower skilled job. They haven't got the basics. So there's many people who are
But that,
complaining
but that's
about
not.
the success of education, that it's
But
not really effective
but
enough.
that's not. Surely that's not because they didn't go to university. That's because they
No,
didn't work at school and they didn't
or
go to
because the
school.
level at school
It's
is
not good
not
enough.
producing what it needs to produce.
That's scary.
Because the kids all went to school, the people that he's trying to employ, everybody's gone to school,
Yeah.
but they've come out of school and they haven't got basic maths, they haven't got basic literacy skills. And he says another thing that he really likes is a basic knowledge of geography, because if you're sending parcels and things, you need to know
Where you're sending them. Yeah.
where you're sending them to, and a lot of the people just don't even have that.
Priscilla
So
says in her
that's complicated, I think.
Priscilla says in her opinion as a parent, the education system, I would say, doesn't aim to develop the children's skills in order to help them find what they want to do for work. Yeah, but I didn't know what I wanted to do for years after I left school. I feel like I had a good education, but it didn't help me find a career. I remember my careers conversation before I left school was 2 or 3 questions. What's your favorite subject? Blah, blah, blah. What do you want to do? I don't know. Okay, that's it. Go. Next one. So there was no coaching, no helping, no testing. There was nothing to help me, to guide me to any kind of career direction. I had to find that by myself, and I found teaching a long time after I left school. So
I think a
Yeah,
lot of
it's difficult.
people are like that too. That's why if I go back to the previous question, because I never got you to tell you what kind of skills I think should be taught in school. I think the subjects that should be taught in school should be linked to skills, so like cooking, like when you said like home
Home
improvements.
economics.
No,
Oh,
and
home
also like
improvements. Yeah.
DIY and things like that. You need basic skills. You need maths. You need a degree of physics, like a certain element of that to know the difference between materials and things. But I would like to see those subjects taught through the lens of practical skills that are useful for your life.
Yeah.
And then I would like to see education, because I think we all have this impression that education ends when you finish university and get your job, or when you finish school and get your job. And I think in today's world, that's so wrong, because what we're seeing is technology is going so fast that we are constantly having to re-educate ourselves. So I think it would be more useful for the government to keep some of the money so that adults later can access new skills and deepen their skills. Maybe go to university when they're 30,
Mm-hmm.
and when they really know what it is that they want to do, but I think the combination of skills and work, you can finish school and you could go to some jobs, you can discover your talents, you can discover your strengths, but you still have the opportunity when you're 30 to go to university.
Yeah.
And here it's not really like that, is it? I mean, not only in Spain, but not in the world in general. And there's very few opportunities for people my age or your age to study without us paying for it.
Yeah, there were in the UK, there was some help for adult education, but probably not enough. And I don't know about Spain if they do help adults, but if kids don't know, like Priscilla was saying, if kids don't know what they want to do when they leave school or university, then there should be that opportunity there for when they have decided that they can go study it and get
Yeah,
qualified in what they've decided to for their career path.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there should be jobs that, like people see work as a more fluid. I think in Spain, there's a lot of emphasis everybody wants the job for life.
That doesn't exist anymore. It used
And
to,
we
and
know it doesn't
it
exist
used to,
anymore.
but I remember on the CV you used to have continuity. Don't change jobs too often. Stay with the same company for years. Show loyalty. That doesn't exist anymore. I think
No.
it's good if you're changing jobs. It shows that you're creative and you're trying
And
to
you're
better yourself,
flexible,
and you're
and you're trying to improve. But the thing is, I mean, I think that is still a very solid idea in the education system in Spain, as I know it, that it's to try to prepare people for one career. And probably that's just not in keeping with the world that we live in now, is it? And
No.
especially if you think of artificial intelligence and how many jobs are going to disappear.
Absolutely. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. I hope we've solved all of the education problems in the world and that everything's good now. We're going to.
I don't hope that. I hope everybody's thinking, oh my God, there's more problems. That's what I've been giving now. We've been given the idea of all the problems, no
But no,
solutions.
I think you're right, Lynn. We don't talk about this enough. It is a serious topic, and it's good to think about this because I think it is outdated, and we do need to reform it for sure. Okay, so until next time, Lynn, can you tell people how you can help them with their English?
Yes, well, I tend to go from your objectives because I like the skills, you see. So if you tell me what you want to do with your English, like you want to go on holiday, you want to order beer, or maybe if you want to write in English, or maybe you want to pass an exam, which a lot of people do for their curriculum. If you come to me with a specific objective, then I try to teach not all of the English that possibly exists, but I'll try to teach you the English that you need so that you can find your own voice and become active in English and use English as a vehicle to do whatever you want to do in life. Unfortunately, for some, I'm only an online teacher. So if you want me to teach you how to change a light bulb in English, you'll just be watching me. I'll not be able to let you do practice because, of course, I'm a remote teacher. So there's some skills that I can't teach, but...
How many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb, Lynn?
I don't know, Craig. How many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb?
Does the light bulb really want to change? Now, just one final comment from Lumiere before we go that I don't necessarily agree with. He thinks it's important for a good foundation because Bill Gates doesn't have university. Oh, I think, I know his sense of humor. Yeah, he's being a bit sarcastic there because lots of tech moguls and successful tech entrepreneurs dropped out of college. They didn't go to college or university. So there are many, Zuckerberg and anyway, lots. So mentioningles.com is where you can study English for free if you happen to be a Spanish speaker. The podcast we have is at inglespodcast.com, which is also free, and that will help you with your English, whatever your native language is. Find it there or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you're interested in studying with me to improve your speaking, I do have private courses, group courses, and private tuition on the website at englishcraig.com. We've just started our new courses this month, but it's not too late to join. Let me know and we'll sort something out. Or you can sign up for April and improve your English fluency. Thank you very much for watching. And we'll see you in 2 weeks for another live stream. Thanks, Lynn, and thank you, everybody.
And thank you for your comments, and your contributions. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.